Hi everyone, this is Eric with the Paper Bear Project. For those of you that are familiar with the Paper Bear Project, you know that I've spent the last 2.5 years learning how to track and then eventually living with wild black bears here in Walton County. I lived with these bears for over 2 years, and during this time I was filming them for an upcoming feature film that we have that will be hopefully released in the spring of next year. And I also spent that time really learning their behaviors and learning how to communicate with them and really learning how they move, how they interact with each other. Because of this, we've been contacted by a lot of people after this sighting of the black bear swimming ashore in Destin, asking us a lot of questions about this incident, what was going on, why was the bear swimming, these sorts of things. I've spent the last couple days looking at the footage just to get a better understanding of what's going on, and I think it's really important for people to understand the Florida black bear. And once you understand the Florida black bear, that incident becomes a lot less, crazy or outrageous. It actually is quite normal. So a female black bear, when she becomes pregnant, she'll have anywhere from 1 to 6 cubs. These cubs stay with her for anywhere from a year to a year and a half. Once they reach that year point, they're called a yearling. Now, at the year and a half stage, the female is ready to mate again, and so one of two things will happen. Either she herself will chase these cubs off, forcing them to go out on their own, or when she meets a male that's ready to mate, often that male will chase these cubs off. This is a very traumatic experience for the cubs. They spent their entire life living with their mother, and then all of a sudden one day they're run off. Now, black bears are not territorial, meaning that they will interact with other black bears in their area. They just have what's called home ranges, and these are areas that they travel through looking for food. The female's home range can be anywhere from 30 to 50 square miles, and the male home range can be as much as 300 square miles. Now, when the yearlings are chased off by the mother or a male black bear ready to mate, the female yearlings are allowed to stay in the mother's home range, whereas the young males are forced out of the mother's home range. A lot of this is for genetics. They don't want the males mating with their female offspring, which would cause genetic problems. So because of this, right now we are in June. This is June. So many mothers who have yearlings are ready to mate, and what they're doing is chasing off their cubs, forcing them to go out and be on their own. For this first month or two, this is a very traumatic experience for these cubs. They're really going out, venturing out, trying to find a new home range of their own. They're trying to figure out where to find food. And so the bear that is in that footage, in the Destin footage, is clear to me it's a yearling, which means it was probably just chased off by its mother in the last maybe 2 weeks to a month. And it is running around trying to find its own home range. Now, how it ended up in Destin, considering there are no bear populations in Destin, I have my theories, but they would ultimately just be speculation. I'd be happy to share them with people if they want to know. Let us know in the comments, and I can kind of give you my perspective on how that bear ended up in Destin. Now, the Florida black bear does like to swim. It's not, in the summer I'd see him a lot getting in water to cool down. I heard some people saying that it swam off the Gulf to get food and fish. This is very unlikely. Only 5% of the Florida black bear's diet is meat, and most of that is either roadkill or dead animals they find, or lizards, frogs, that sort of thing. They're very calories in, calories out thinkers, meaning when they're eating, they calculate how much energy am I going to have to put into this versus how much caloric intake am I going to get out of it. For a black bear to think about swimming off the coast to try and find a fish is just really not a realistic thing. Now, it's way more realistic to think about this yearling being driven off, and it is probably going out looking for its own new home range. And it also makes me think that it was most likely a male, just because it's so far away from any wild space like Topsail or out the Eglin Reservation. So my thinking would be it's a young male, and it's probably traveling pretty far. And so why was it in the water? There's a good chance when these bears come to the edge of water, let's say at Okaloosa Island, if the mother's home range was near a lot of homes there because maybe she's got accustomed to eating out of garbage, let's say she ran the yearling off, well, he might come up to the Intercoastal Waterway and see land on the other side. They will swim across to reach an island and try and establish a new home range. So it's totally feasible to think that this bear ended up on Okaloosa Island, maybe started traveling east, and then it hit the Destin Pass, saw Destin across, and possibly tried to swim across the pass and got caught in that current and ripped out the pass. And then that current that comes out of the Destin Pass will often dump into Destin very close to where it came ashore. So this is, obviously that's speculation on my part, but that also really fits into the characteristics and the habits of the Florida black bear. Now, one thing I want to discuss, because I've heard this brought up, I've heard a couple people saying, oh, this just shows that the population of black bears, especially out at Eglin, is getting so big they're spilling over and we need to open up the bear hunt. This couldn't be further from the truth. When we started filming, I was actually going to go out to Eglin and film the black bears out there, and I worked very closely with Jackson Guard, but the population of black bears out there is so small, it just really wasn't worth my time to go out there and try and find them and spend my time filming with them. Another thing, in terms of bear populations, female black bears in many ways self-regulate in terms of population size. When the female gets pregnant, she gets pregnant in June, July, that egg does not implant, or those eggs do not implant until around October, November, December. So they literally float in her body, in her uterus, for months while she spends the entire summer collecting food. If she gets enough food to support her cubs, then the eggs will implant and she will have cubs. So this also determines the number of cubs she has, which is also another reason you don't want to feed wild black bears, because often you'll give a false sense of the food that's out there. They might have more cubs than they can actually support, and then that becomes a problem. So in many ways, the Florida black bear is a self-regulating population, in that if there's plenty of food, they'll have enough cubs to support that. If they can't find enough food in a season, they will self-abort those fertilized eggs and not actually have the babies. I hope this was helpful in understanding. That bear was, in my opinion, clearly a youngling that was just pushed off by its mother, and he's probably just running around trying to find his place. For those of you that are worried, what's going to happen, he's stuck in Destin. He will most likely find places to sleep and then start moving around at night, and hopefully eventually end up at Topsail or Point Washington State Forest to establish his own new home range. If you have any questions or you want to hear more opinions, just enter some comments below and we'll answer as many as we can. Thanks. Have a good night.